Okay, we ready to start? Well, this is Darcy Brockman, Business Account Manager, Youth Employment Consultant for the Division of Oak Rehab, and we have teamed up with the City of Auburn to host some career interest webinars, and we're gonna be we're gonna be talking to the inventory tech, the crime analysis, a network administrator, a licensing specialist, the voter registration, the recreational specialist / deputy recreational director, and the downtown coordinator. So these are very informative, and some of my counselors are going to be asking the questions, so please enjoy.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Young. I'm a casework supervisor for vocational rehab services in Lewiston, Maine. And I guess I'll just jump right in. So Mark, I do appreciate your time today. I'm willing to answer some questions to help inform students of some of these different career paths. So first, what education and training did you need for this role?
Not a lot of education or training was needed, but you do have to have like basic computer skills. You have to be able to talk with people without using a whole lot of slang. So.
Okay. And what work experience did you have prior to this that kind of lined up with this goal?
I kind of fell into this job, but it was all, I always wanted to work with computers, and now I get to work with computers, I get to work with people. So I've did a whole lot of customer service, retail work before I got here.
Great. And so what type of computer work did you do prior?
Most of it was inventory. Like I worked for Napa for several years, so I did inventory for them, looking at parts and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. And what would you say are the essential job functions? So what do you do in a day?
I do a lot of things. Some of it is I deal with crew members on a daily basis for passing out keys for vehicles that needed. I work with the mechanics in ordering the parts that they need for their job every day. I do fuel inventory. I process invoices.
Great. What would you say is the best part of your job?
Working with people. I get to work with a vast amount of different people.
And why is that? What's the good thing about working with people?
I love talking to people. I get to deal with the public. I get to deal with crew members here. It's an all around good place.
Great.
It's a good environment.
And what do you feel is the most challenging part of your job?
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
Yep. Before COVID, it wasn't so bad, but now that with COVID, everything is, sometimes it's a week out, sometimes it's a couple days out, and most people want their stuff now.
Sure. What types of things do you keep inventory for?
I keep a lot of inventory on like spark plugs and the mechanics stuff, but I have like fuel is also a big inventory, gas, diesel, because everyone fuels here at Public Works.
Do you do anything regarding the budget of all those items?
I don't.
Okay.
I have to stay within a budget, but I don't.
Yep.
I'm not usually in on the budget planning.
So you kind of get a budget submitted to you and you kind of get those items.
Yes.
Great. And so more in detail, can you take me through a typical day and take me through some of those things that you do?
First thing in the morning, I usually hand out keys to the guys that come to my window. And from there, I look at the work orders from the previous day, figure out what the mechanics are gonna need for the day we're coming into. So then I'll start ordering that stuff. And then from there, I go into closing out work orders and then processing invoices to send to finance.
Sure.
and that takes up most of my day.
What types of computer programs do you use to keep track of this inventory and work orders?
We use Word, Excel. I use Access for my PO program. And then we have Munis that is used for budgeting. And then I've got a fuel serve that talks to the fuel pump.
Okay. Well, you mentioned PO. Can you go into more detail of what that means and the program that you use?
A PO is a purchase order. So every time you like first of the week, I usually give Napa a PO, and it's good for the whole week. And that gives them the access to or authorization to bill us for parts.
Great. What types of things were you interested in high school? And do you think those interests in high school, do you think that you would have been here?
I always wanted to work with computers when I was in school, and then I took a couple years off, and then I started working in the retail field, and then I ended up here, and I get to work in the retail field and with computers.
Excellent. And is there a requirement on your current job to have continued training?
There is not, but it's good to keep up on new and upcoming programs.
Great. Yeah. And you mentioned before you kind of fell into this job. What, how did that happen? What do you think was the process there?
I started out as a second shift PM mechanic. So I was doing oil changes and preventive maintenance. And then this position opened up, and I went for it and I got it.
Great. How long have you been in this role?
12 years.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
you like it? You've been there for some time.
I do like it.
Great.
Because I get to work with the mechanics, and I get to work with everyone throughout the city in each department.
So what other skills are needed for your role? You mentioned communication, some computer skills. Is there any other skills that would be helpful?
You gotta have good like phone etiquette and like really good communication. No, not so much with the slang terms, but you gotta be able to get down and understand what the mechanics are talking about. You gotta understand what your parts vendors are talking about. So you have to have a broad spectrum of knowledge.
So do you think it's good that you had that mechanical experience and you know a lot more of that terminology and
Yes.
and what goes, so that may be helpful for somebody else going into this role?
Yes. Yep.
I would say what percentage of time do you work on the computer as opposed to other portions of your daily tasks?
85% of my day is on the computer.
Oh, okay. That's a large portion. What would
It
you say
is.
is the remaining portion there? What?
Usually running around, like taking inventory, writing things down.
Great. What would be some good advice you could give to a high school student wanting to go into this field? What would you suggest to them?
I would say stay current on upcoming programs and knowledge of what you want to do.
Great. And what is I guess I'm just curious, what is the sheer number of items you have in your inventory? Can you go through some?
I probably have close to $1 million worth of inventory sitting in my parts room.
That's
And
quite a bit.
it goes from like radiators, we have drums and brakes, And then the common, we have oil, spark plugs, oil filters. We have a lot packed in my room, plus I've got a couple other places in Public Works.
Yeah, and I guess I'm also curious too about more the budget. You said you don't have any say in that. Where does that budget come from? How does it, the company in itself, or?
Yes, well, we use Lucity for our inventory tracking. So all of my numbers go to my boss, and from my boss makes up the inventory. I mean, the budget, and then they send it to the director.
Does any of that those needs come from mechanics themselves, saying maybe I need a axle or?
Yes, yep. I mean, we also we have each mechanic has like a tool budget. So, because we provide all the mechanics their tools,
Great.
so,
Are those tools under warranty if they break them?
yes.
Good,
And then they come to me to get them warranted.
excellent. Anything else you can state about your job or maybe?
You know, it's a great organization to work for. I've been here 12 years. I plan on retiring from here.
Oh, great.
So if anyone's looking to take my job, they're not getting it anytime soon.
Do you get benefits with this job?
Yes, yep. We
Great.
get
And
all the normal health insurance, and then we can add on additional like dental, eye, all kinds of other pet insurance.
excellent.
But we also get the ability to order parts with our company discount, paying tax. We pay the company discount plus tax,
Great.
which is a big benefit.
Any retirement plan?
Yes,
there?
I have mainstay retirement.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So, but some people have the option of a 401k or a 457.
And are you within a union with this
Yes.
job?
Yep.
I would say also, is it a regular 8 to 5 that you work?
I work 7 to 3, Monday through Friday. And
Great.
then from November 15th to April 15th, I'm on call for third shift plowing.
Oh, okay. So you do, is that any added overtime for you when you do some
Yes.
plowing? Okay.
Yep.
What would you say is your range for plowing, travel wise?
I do all the main arterials, Center Street, Minot Ave, Washington Street. So I don't know mileage wise, but we hit it every 2 hours.
So you have to do some maintenance on the vehicles as well, the plow trucks and whatnot.
Yeah, we have to, before we take it out, we have to do what we call a VIR, vehicle inspection report. So we have to check out like the tires, make sure the wipers are good, mirrors are good, lights are all working, or it's got plenty of oil. So
Great. Any other any different tasks in the summer and spring as opposed to winter, or?
in the summer, I just stay inside in the garage doing my normal inventory job.
Okay. Great. Well, I think there's only 5 minutes left. I'll defer to any others who have any questions.
I think you covered quite a few. And I think Mark added to that too. Thank you.
Yes, I love to talk.
Well, we very much appreciate your time today. I think this is going to be very helpful for someone going into the similar field.
Yes.
So again, thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you, Jeremy. I believe we're gonna move next to Bernadette, who is the crime analysis. And Jeremy, you're gonna continue with that interview for me?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Hi, Bernadette. How are you today?
Excellent. Hi, I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. I'm Jeremy Young. I'm a casework supervisor for the Lewiston office. And we're going to be asking some questions today to help students figure out more information on different career paths. So I'll just jump right into that.
Okay.
What education and trainings did you need for this role?
My job definitely requires a college degree. Can be like stats or economics or even criminal justice, but I definitely like suggest supporting that with some math or mapping or, computer science maybe. Yeah, and then ongoing training is kind of a perpetual thing. But yeah, as far as education goes, it does require a college degree.
What types of continued education do you complete?
So I have 3 training conferences a year. That's a bit unusual. I started as an academic, so some of my conferences are actually more academically inclined, like write papers and do research and things. But I do 2 major crime analysis training conferences because there is no formal training like in-house because there's only one of me. If you're in a small agency, you're going to be the only analyst, so it's not like you can batch train. So you sort of travel for that purpose. And then it's continuing, like I decide that I want to be able to do something in the databases and I go, find a way to train myself in SQL or SQL. Or like if I want statistical analysis, like R is a free software package to do analysis for you because the for pay ones are very expensive, but it also uses proprietary coding language. So you have to train yourself how to do that. So it's all just, teaching yourself how to do what you want to do for the thing that you're doing. That was a lot of doing right there.
Yeah. Did you do any coding before this?
Not really. I mean, I did statistical analysis, so I had experience with R. Really, the only thing I need to do coding with is like your databases are never going to be as clear and accessible as you want them to be. So a lot of what I do is playing with police data, like digging out all the nuances, which means I need to know exactly what's happening in the database, so basically I need to know enough SQL to be able to dig into it and figure out what information is held where. Which, I mean, doesn't really have to be a lot of coding. It's something you can Google in an afternoon. If you want to know more, you can know more. That's always fun.
Yeah. Great. And what type of work experience did you have before this job?
So, so I actually was a physics teacher in Tanzania, which is completely irrelevant. But
Oh wow.
It could be like basically you can do anything you want, and eventually end up here. But so I was getting a PhD in criminology, and I started doing internships with the police department, and I did a big sea change into being a crime analyst at that point because I turned out I didn't actually like the PhD part, and I really liked the internship part, the dealing with law enforcement. But I would heavily recommend, as far as work experience goes, start off with the police department. Like get to know, make sure that you can get along well with cops. It's a particular mindset that's what causes analysts to burn out most frequently. Is you have to deal with horrible things on the job and you have to deal with officers. I'm not equating the two in terms of badness. Like officers are great, but it's a particular mindset. And so, do an internship, make sure that you can get along with them, that you do thrive in that environment. Beyond that, I mean, a lot of analysts that's their first job out of college. You're going to start out as a lower ranking analyst and work your way up, but it's not something where you necessarily need a lot of experience just to jump into it. You need a lot of creativity and a lot of, I guess, willpower.
Mm-hmm.
But that's yeah. I mean, any work experience is always beneficial, but
yeah. What would you say are your essential job functions? What do you do in a day?
Okay, so that depends on the agency. So I work for Auburn. I put out weekly reports and monthly reports. Weekly reports are sort of like statistics-driven newsletters of what's been happening, what I expect to happen next. And I spend a lot of time, like I come in every morning and I read all the cases, all the incidents from the previous night, see if I detect any patterns, if I recognize people, if I can, make any predictions. I also publish a lot of bulletins, who we're looking for, what crimes we've been seeing, if there's an officer safety hazard, all that kind of stuff. I do a lot of mapping, I do a lot of collating, and I help with investigations. I do background checks. I do a lot of OSINT, which is open source intelligence or social media investigations. And then I do numbers generation for the department. Like, so we have grants, or we are responsible for reporting to the federal government all kinds of information about us or to the public. And I'm the one who gets those numbers and makes sure they're correct and disseminates them.
So it's very detailed.
I could backpedal that and tell you guys less much, but yeah, it's the broad strokes of what I do.
Yeah. What is the best part of your job?
Helping people. It's
Okay.
why I'm in law enforcement in the first place. So a lot of what I do is help deter crime. Like I say, an officer in a car in this area at this time of day is going to like scare off the teeny boppers who've been causing trouble, or maybe we can deter some shoplifting, or sometimes this family's been having trouble. Maybe if we were around, we could give support, kind of thing. But and sometimes my work, like I directly help lead to an arrest, or I help somebody out of a bad situation. I love, we do see horrible things, and I love to be able to be like, okay, I helped in that situation. These people are a little better because of me. It's great. That's why I do this instead of any other data analysis job.
Great. That's excellent. And I think you already touched upon this, but what is the most challenging part of your job?
That horrible things happen to people, and sometimes it's horrible things, people doing horrible things to other people. It's incredibly draining. Yeah.
How do you continue resilience in this job?
Well, I do spend a lot of time taking care of myself. Like, I focus on keeping myself healthy. I have my social group, my social interaction. My dog gets petted a lot after a bad day. And I'm pretty firm about leaving the office at the office. So like, if there's something major that happens, I'll come back and help. But I try not to, if something is going wrong or doing poorly, I don't know, if there's a crime that I've been investigating at work, I try very hard to not think about that after I leave, so that I can, to separate that my work and home life, so I can decompress at the end of the day. It's also important to make friends within the department, so that you can, like, I can't go home and talk to my friends in town about crime happening in town, right? That's sort of unethical. So, you have to be able to decompress by talking to people within the department about what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely good to vent to a work buddy.
Yeah.
That's great. I guess, can you take me through a typical day and how you start the day and what occurs?
Sure. So I come in at 8 or 8:30, depending on if I worked out in the morning. And then I swing by patrol first and just sort of touch base with the guys, see if anything interesting happened the night before. Mostly it's just because it's important for us to like see each other, because I'm like, I spend a lot of time asking them questions about their reports and clarification, so it's better if like we're friendly, so that I don't look like a jerk when I'm like, hey, why did you write this thing in your report? This way it can be like, hey buddy, you missed a bit, what's this? And so I do that. I come upstairs and then I print off the like everything that happened in the last 24 hours or since the last time that I checked the call log. And I read through the entire thing. I open up all the reports. I document anything that might lend itself towards a pattern, developing activities. I try to keep track of who's friends with who, like who's on, who are like both at the same call, or if we have a runaway, who that runaway was running towards, stuff like that, that might be able to help us further, or in later investigations, whatever. So do a lot of that. Just anything that might predict future crime or assist in solving a future crime. If there's a major investigation going on, I'll generally swing by the detective's office and see if they want any help, or swing by the detective's office and force them to take my help, depending on how interesting the case is. And I get lots of data requests, so I'll figure out how to generate the number that people want, and I'll fork those over. And then I do a bunch of training in the afternoon. Well, not a bunch of, depending on how much time is available, I'll pick a project and I'll start training on it. And then the rest of the time spent with me wandering around talking to people, because that's kind of important too.
Great. What types of things were you interested in high school, and what career did you think you would have in the future? Did it kind of line up, or was it kind of totally off?
Totally off. I did a little bit of everything in high school. I was a major soccer player, but mostly I was interested in English. Like I wrote and read and all kinds of things. I ended up, when I went to college, I started studying physics, not because I was particularly interested, but I don't really know how I fell into physics. And then, so, I was in the Peace Corps and I taught physics. And it was actually while I was in the Peace Corps that I was like, wait a second, law enforcement. I came back to America and I'd grown better at reading people, and I saw a lot more of the, like people treating people poorly and wanting to be able to help was a thing all of a sudden for me. That's how I started leading towards criminology and then law enforcement specifically. So it was definitely an evolution of a process. This is not where I expected I'd end up when I was 16.
How long do you think it took you to become trained in this role with education and whatnot?
Well, me particularly, I spent 5 years getting a PhD, so I'm probably not a good example. The standards, so if you get a degree that is not directly focused on crime analysis and you come out of it, I'd say it'll probably take you 3 months to sort of get your feet under you if you walk into a new job. I think that's fairly standard though. The problem is, so every agency has extremely varied requirements and social environments. So like, you can't say like, you can't get ready for this job and then be ready for that job. So like, this is actually several positions down the line for crime analysis. And it took me a couple of months to get my feet under me here, even though like I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had to figure out how to suit that to this department. In terms of just, knowing enough so that you can get the job done, I'd say probably 3 months, like with a fresh start.
Great. I think you had mentioned that you have a requirement for continued training. What types of training what kind of topics do you train on?
Well, so I do a lot of GIS mapping, so I train in that. Investigation stuff. Sometimes I take classes in spreadsheeting just because people have cool tricks in Excel and database management. I do a lot. Like my favorite thing is trainings that actually involve other people doing case studies. So walking through what they did to contribute to a major investigation, just because people are weird and I want to know about it. I mean, the driving force between me doing what I do is that I'm really nosy. So getting to be nosy about other people's crime as well as my crime is great. I mean, there's also like basic stuff like, I'm certified in CPR. We have to maintain first aid training. I have training in, I've got a sheet here actually. It involves implicit human bias, so like don't be racist, fire extinguisher training, bloodborne pathogens exposure, all kinds of just, basic stuff. I'm trying to get my officers to train me how to secure a firearm, not because I ever intend to use a firearm, but because I'm surrounded by men with guns and women, people with guns all day, and I feel like it's, unsafe for me not to know how to secure a gun if one is dropped on the floor, kind of thing. Just sort of basic, as things come available and I realize I need to know them. There's a couple of organizations that offer free analysis training just because there's so few like centralized resources, places to go to actually learn stuff. Like you can't go to the Maine Academy of Criminal Justice and learn crime analysis. You have to find other resources. So,
can you list some of those places that you can get that analysis training?
Okay, so IACA, the International Association of Crime Analysts, offers a major training conference every year, which I like to go to when I can. And they also have a bunch of online resources, and they have a textbook, which is somewhere in here. Sorry, there's a bookshelf over there, somewhere on that. It's IALEA is IALEIA, I think. It's like a more national counterpoint to IACA. I'm not actually a member of that one because there's only so many memberships I can maintain at any given time. Also offers individual training. There's regional sections. The National White Collar Crime Center investigates national or white collar crime, but they also offer a lot of computer forensics based courses. That's where I get a lot of like my spreadsheeting database, some of my more generic mapping stuff out of them. There's some stuff through the federal government, but that's sort of heavily dependent on connections. You have to get somebody to give you permission to access the class. So, you have to, there's some networking involved in getting those things off the ground.
Great. I would say, do you have any other kind of connection with forensic computer, anything with like computers and forensics?
So I'm not certified in any of the technician components. A lot of the time I can work with the information once it's taken off of a device, but I'm not the person to go into the device and get the stuff. We have a couple of certified people at the department for that, or that's a lab thing. Sometimes it's a detective thing if they go to a special training for it. I have some, like, I'm not certified in computer forensics at all. No, I would not say that's my specialty. It's definitely like I will play with the files. I will find the data you want after it's been extracted from the computer. I'm not the person to go in there in the first place.
Great. And I would say, what communication skills are needed in your job role?
I send a lot of email. I write a lot for my bulletins, reports. I spend a lot of time talking with coworkers. I don't have to talk to the public, which is great for me because I have a very small filter. Chris is making faces on the thing because she knows it's true. Being able to get along with people is important. Just because, again, you do have to socialize in order to survive law enforcement, as far as I can tell, because it is a very stressful, where people cluster together for solidarity kind of thing, field. So, but I think it's also fairly accepting as long as you're, open-minded. So, I'm not actually great with people, and yet I get along well here. So, yeah.
Great. And one last question: what advice would you give to a youth trying to go into this career path?
Make sure that you work well with officers. So do ride-alongs if you can, or ask our alternatives if you can't. I actually asked some of the guys downstairs about this, if they'd be willing to, sit down with somebody who wasn't like physically capable of doing a ride-along, and see if they, like if their personalities match, kind of thing. Just, answer questions. So know about law enforcement before you get into it. I've seen people go through an entire criminal justice degree and then be like, wait a second, I don't like cops. I don't like helping the community. I don't like working in this environment. And they have to backtrack and find an entirely new career plan. The other thing is make sure that you think that playing with numbers and maps and data is fun. Because I really enjoy my job. I get to do weird things with data all the time. I get to look into people's background. That sounds creepy. I get to make or identify connections between people that sort of help me explain why they behave the way they do, and thus predict what they might do in the future. I get to do all kinds of cool stuff, but it's cool because it's what I like to do, not because it's inherently cool. So make sure you are also the kind of person that thinks that's interesting.
Right.
I think that's sort of applicable to any field, but still important to mention.
Well, Bernadette, we so appreciate your time today and your excellent information. Thanks again.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yes, have a good day.
Bye.
And next up, we welcome Brian Susi, and I think Charlotte's going to be interviewing you for this, so welcome.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm a vocational counselor. I work mostly with youth. And thank you for your time today, being willing to answer some questions to
Sure.
help students who might be interested in what you are doing.
Certainly.
I'm just going to kind of ask some questions. I really welcome you to volunteer whatever information you would like. We're going to start with, what kind of education and training did you need to do your job?
So basics, my job here with the city is kind of few different things rolled into one. It's networking, all the networking aspects of the city, but on top of the security part. You know, and then also we do some computer repair and whatnot. The nice thing about the city is that it allows you to do a lot of different things. Whereas in some organizations, you're hired to do one thing and that's it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So basically, it's very good to get a basics of computer. So you could go to a community college or university and get computer repair. Computer repair teaches you basically the total background of how computers work. And it really helps to at least know that when you're trying to attack things. But you should get basically that. You should go in and get some networking experience, at least a beginner's level networking certificate, preferably a little more than that. The security part is the same as the network, but it's a different animal. So that has a whole list of schooling for the security part. But so it would allow you to basically, it would be best to go in and get at least an associate's or more in basic computer technology or science. So
What led, what work experience did you have that led you to the position that you have now?
So for a number of years, I worked within the city in the community access television part. If you're familiar with community access television, anyway, it's the dubbed down version of PBS, kind of. And in that job, I was responsible, of course, for a lot of video stuff. But because of budgets, you don't have enough money to hire all the different components to keep things working. So you learn to be a jack of all trades. And so therefore, for a number of years, I learned on my own the networking issues, the firewall issues, and a lot of those things, which definitely is kind of like the school of hard knocks, I would say. I would not definitely say that would be the best way to start out. But it's how I started out. And then eventually I ended up transferring from that side of things. And then I went to school. I took a number of computer courses strategically in the areas that I was interested in. And one thing led to another, and here I am. So
there you go.
Yeah.
What would you say, how could you describe a typical day on your job?
So typically I'll come in, me personally, right? So typically I'll come in and as it states, I'm responsible for the security of the network. So I typically every day come in and I will look at logs that our firewalls and produce as far as our network activity over the last day. And it leads me to look into areas that might be suspicious, may not be, but that's what I do. And so I'll look at those logs and I will continue on after it's almost like you're reading the morning newspaper with a cup of coffee. I read the security logs from our firewall, which is kind of neat because you get to see what everybody in the city is, where they're going and what they're doing, and then what I'll do, the other part of my job is the networking part. So I may take one day, I may run cable through the ceiling and hook up data plugs in a room that needs more, the Ethernet plugs in the wall where you plug your computers in. I'll do that. I may install switches. I'll troubleshoot areas and try to find out, there's never a lack of problems in a network. So you spend your day one at a time tackling those problems. And it's always something different. And sometimes I'll even get into pulling computers and helping our computer tech repair or troubleshoot computers or systems that aren't working. You would have to try to figure out, say you have a problem with somebody's computer, software is not working or something like that. Well, then you have to troubleshoot what's making the software not work. Is it a netware issue? Is it an application issue? But those are all theoretically part of my day, you know. So that it's great you don't get stuck doing the same thing all the time. Special if you like a variety and you like the problem solved. This is perfect position for somebody.
Sounds like it is. And how do people communicate with you when they are having issues? Is there a formal system, or do they just reach out and say, I need this done or that done, or have a question about something?
Yeah, typically most larger organizations do have an in-place system. The City of Auburn is not unlike the larger organizations. We do have a system or a help desk system where people would, they'll email an email address and they'll state their problems or concerns. We'll log them in a chart that we use, and then we'll, depending on priority or level of, problem, if it's something that needs to be dealt with right off the bat, we'll contact that person and ask the pertinent questions. And sometimes though, people walk by your office and say, oh, it's never been big enough to think that they want to take the time to actually ask for support until you walk by them and it jars their memory. And it's like, oh, well, you're here. You get a lot of that stuff.
So how big of a team do you have? And are you in a leadership role, or is it a team of peers?
It is a team of peers, somewhat there, but in the city, there's 4 designated IT and staff. We have the IT director who oversees everything, of whom I report to. And I have a leadership role I'm responsible for the network. And so when things go awry or there's issues in that area, I will take care of that sort of thing. We don't all necessarily know how to do each other's jobs, which is not a bad thing, I mean, because every aspect of computer technology is a specialization, and you just can't know everything about it all. And so we have another 2 staff. We have a computer tech who rolls out computers, troubleshoots computer issues, sets up printers, does things like that. And we have another software technician or application technician who works more on the application side of things, such as the software that the business would use to do their business. The city uses a number of different softwares to, from taking taxes to people coming in and requesting permits and all of that. There's a public works, there's a lot of different aspects of the city. So there are specialized folks here that just deal with the application side of things. So that's basically how it is between the 4 of us,
Now, would you say you have ongoing education because things in that field are changing? Or is that kind of something that you need to do, or is that something that you do kind of as part of your daily job?
So ongoing education in computer science is a necessary, very important fact that you have to do. And you really almost have to be a self-starter, because you can't always do, you can go and take class after class after class, which is one way to stay educated. And that's, you do that. But more so, what you have to do is you have to read, and you have to read magazines, and you have to read articles. You have to stay on top of computer technology, because it's an ever-changing world. What's great today in 2 weeks could be, oh, that was 2 weeks ago. We got this something new. And on the security side, the security side of things, that changes daily. There'll be new things. We get publications of new infections or new things or new schemes or whatnot to look out for on a daily basis. And if you choose to just decide you're going to go get a degree, and then that's it, you have the degree, you show up to work every day and you fix computers, and you never put forth a conscious effort to learn more, you're not going to last. You're eventually just going to not be effective. So somebody that wants to be in this field, number one, must like to troubleshoot. They have to be interested in this world, but they also have to, and of course, when you're interested in something, that already taxes the brain to want to read more about it, so you've got to stay on top of stuff as best you can. I mean, there's so much out there, you never can become a true Jedi master at it, but as long as you try.
So to you, what's the best part of your job?
Oh, going home. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I actually love troubleshooting. I've always loved troubleshooting. And in this job, you get to troubleshoot a lot of stuff. But I like the interaction with people. As Bernadette had mentioned before, I don't theoretically during the day interact with the general public a lot. But one of the nice things in an IT role that you don't see if you're working for the city and you're in another role is that you have the ability to see and meet everybody. Everybody works with computers and everybody has problems sometimes. So I'm constantly going around all of our edge locations like police, fire, public works, the arena, rec department, and you meet everybody, you get to talk to people. So you learn, you become friends with people, which I like to do that. When we have functions, it's not, you don't just have to stick with your little clique. When you go there, everybody knows you, so I enjoy computer technology and what makes it tick. I like to figure out when things aren't when things aren't working, and I like people, so I get it all in this job. So
That's really interesting.
yeah,
What do you
I
say
don't,
is
not just, my wife told me not to tell stories, but the whole part of my other life is I've been a working musician, so I've gotten used to telling stories. But I'm no good at. I don't know anything about mechanics in a car, but troubleshooting is the same no matter what you do. And one day my son worked for a whole day trying to figure something out on a four-wheeler, and I showed up and he laughed about asking me for help. And I said, don't laugh. And I took him through the steps of troubleshooting and we solved it. So it's good. This type of job gets your mind to think that way, and you can apply what you know here to a lot of stuff, but I'm sorry. Yeah, so.
That's okay. Well, I asked the best part. What do you think is the most challenging part to you?
The challenging part is because it's ever changing. You know what I mean? And if you're not staying on top of your technology and your world, then you're going to run into problems where, you may not be able to solve things as quick because it's just changed. And if you would have read this report or if you would have studied this, it's just not there. That's the challenging part. I will go back where I mentioned the School of Hard Knocks, where I don't recommend doing that first, because everybody has in their family the individual who they go to for tech support. My Uncle John fixes my computer. Well, they go for, that person sure knows a lot of stuff. And if they've had no formal training and they've just learned it, you go through a lot of trial by error learning how to do things. And when you take the formal training and you go and you do the formal schooling in a lot of these areas, you learn the basic backbone. You may not learn everything, but you learn the backbone of how things tick. And if you would have taken this class, you would have known not to spend 3 hours trying to make something work that wouldn't work before you gave up and tried something else. So that's one of the other things that makes schooling so important, Yeah. So
I'm curious what kind of things you might have been interested in when you were in high school. And did you see, or did you have an idea of what career you wanted? And was it a match to what you're doing now, or was it something?
I don't know.
different?
I don't know what the correct answer to that is, but the answer is no. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a performer or a music teacher. I studied music from an early age. And while I was in high school, I'm old enough to have gone to school when they allowed you to work while you were going to school. So I worked my sophomore and junior year full time in a bakery, and I learned how to bake. So I was always into technology through music, but I never got into the actual technology field until 2005, when and of course I just love the aspects of what it takes to do this job. So I fell right in love with it, and that one thing led to another. And so now here I am at 60 years old, but
So it turned out to be a really great match to things that you've done in your life and things that you're interested in.
yes, I think overall, if you look exactly, you look at what I've done from high school to now, it all led to this event. The different things that you choose to do sort of takes you down that road, and the aspects of what I did all had fingers of this type of work in it, which I think is one reason why I took to it so quick when I formally decided to step into this career, as opposed to, being the kid down the road that everybody brought their tech to, so.
So, you've talked a lot about the different things you do. What would you say, percentage of the time you do spend kind of communicating with others versus doing some of that troubleshooting?
I communicate with others. Typically, the stereotypical IT person that lives in the basement of their mother's house and never comes out to see is not true. I spend the entire day communicating with people, verbally, face to face. You communicate with people, so it's really good to know how to form sentences and actually talk to folks. But the other thing in your communication is it's really great that you can sit there and you can talk for 5 minutes and have nobody understand a word you said because you're talking technical stuff. You really need to know how to talk to people and so that somebody with a non-technical background or could at least somewhat understand what you're talking about. That is very important. It's the same way we email a number of times. We're answering emails to people requesting help that way. So you need to communicate with these folks in the same manner. And quite frankly, we all have our talents, and everybody in a business, it's good to realize that they're all not going to be technical. Your job, it's not their job to know your job. So you have to give people the courtesy to expect that they're experts in their job, and I have no clue about their job. So, it's easy to look at somebody and say, well, didn't you just do that? Which to me sounds so simple, but to them, it's a miracle cure, but it's so simple, So, yeah. So I think that goes in the communication. You can talk to somebody, but you really need to, and I don't know, actually, if you can go to school and learn that. But if you're cognizant to the fact that that's part of communicating with people, I think that would be enough for somebody,
That's interesting. So I have one final question. What's the best advice you could give someone, a student who's wanting to get into the field that you're in now?
I would say, buy yourself a computer and some tech at home. And learn about how computers work at home. If we're talking a high school student. Yeah. Okay. Learn about computers, I say that like they don't know anything. Most high school students know more than I do, I think, sometimes about tech. It's the way of the
I'm
world.
raised that way.
Yeah, you know how, yeah. But still, there are certain directions you can look in, read about cybersecurity and things like that. But then if they really want to get into the field, apply to a community college, at least some basic stuff, to start getting a background, a formal background in the basics. And then as you read about it, there are so many different fields you can go in computer technology, that it's so hard at first to, there are, you could get 4 masters, I think, and still not touch every possibility of a career with computer technology. So just try to figure out what they like, whether it's coding, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's network or just computer repair. If they want to go into a field and make a lot of money, the public sector is not the place to go. But if you want to go, if you're not so concerned about that and you want to go into a career where you're going to get exposed and learn about many different aspects of computer technology, then it is a good place to go. But at first, the first thing you can do, if you go out and you start taking some basic computer courses, associate's degree, or move it into a bachelor's degree, at least then you'll start to learn what's out there. You know what I mean?
And also what your interests, where they might lie.
It's exactly right. Yep. Yeah. And there's careers out there for folks who can't get around. I mean, if you can sit in a chair all day, there are computer careers out there that will do that. You know what I mean? So it's one of the great things about computer technology is it's always a brain job. Some aspects require physical ability to climb ladders and do things like that. But you don't have to do that. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, yeah, hopefully.
Well, I want to thank you, Brian, for your
Sure.
time, the great information you gave today.
Awesome. Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And I believe that we're moving on to Allison Pepin, licensed specialist / voter register. Is it register or registrar? Or
Allison, you need to unmute your phone. If your phone is on mute. Let's see where she is. Oh, there she is. It's showing that your phone is muted, Allison. Are you connected by phone? Okay, we can't hear you. Let me see. It's not letting me merge her. How about, I see that, who's next on the list after Donna?
Can you hear me now?
I can, that's good.
Oh, good.
so hello, Allison.
So good afternoon.
Hey. So your job is licensed specialist in voter is it register or registrar that your title?
Registrar.
So tell me a little bit about what you do and what education and training led you to be what you're doing now.
So what I do, my title is actually Deputy City Clerk, licensed specialist. And my job is essentially administering elections, issuing vital records, all records management, business licensing, and just working with the public.
And what kind of education and training have you had along the way?
So in order to, I do apologize. Chris, can we stop this for a second?
You want to take a pause?
I do.
Do you want us to move on to Donna and then come back to you?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
And do you want to use my office, Allison? Would that be better?
It is very distracting here. Yes, that probably would be best, Chris.
Okay, come on up.
All right, thank you.
So do we want to move on and then come back to Allison?
Sure. Donna is here. Sorry, Donna.
That's okay. I'm already on here, so.
And Lori, are you gonna?
Yeah. Hi, Donna. My name is Lori Corbett. I'm a casework supervisor at the Lewiston Voc Rehab office. And I really appreciate your time today. We're going to ask you a few questions that we can share with students and even adults who are interested in a career path, learning more about a career path similar to yours. So I just have a few questions. And you feel free to add things that I haven't asked too. So first of all, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what you do in your job.
So there's two job titles in the description next to my name. Recreation specialist is how I started full-time at the Auburn Rec Department. And that's the entry-level position. So that's where most of my knowledge is. I've been the deputy director here for about 2 years. So I'll probably be bouncing back and forth between the two. But basically what I do daily is, that's the best part about this job is I couldn't even tell you. You come in and there's always something new and different happening. My main responsibility is making sure our programmers, which is the recreation specialist position, are all set. Their programs are running smoothly. They're communicating with their coaches, the patrons, the public, and making sure that getting all the information out about if there's any changes. So specifically, we work with youth programs. So that's anything between summer camps, youth soccer, youth basketball, all the general sports. And then we work with adults. So we do adult leagues, it's softball, basketball. We're starting to branch out a little bit more and do tournaments. And then we have a large senior community. We have our own building for them, the Auburn Senior Community Center, where they have trips planned, they do activities with there's many different groups that come and use the building. So I just work directly with the programmers, making sure that they are all set and that we're book solid, always doing something, because that's what the community wants. And that's our main duty, is to make sure the community's happy.
That's great. So one of my questions is, could you describe a typical day? And it sounds like that would be a challenge.
Yeah, I tried to write something like that down because I do get that question quite a bit. But I would say when I was a rec specialist, I would come in, check your emails immediately, because most of the programs happen when you're not in the office. It's definitely not an 8 to 4:30 job, Monday through Friday. It's 7 day a week. It's usually after 4:30 your programs are happening. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you're checking communications, whether it's voicemails, emails, and getting back to people in a timely manner. It's hard because the public doesn't always understand that you have multiple programs and they're not the only one, but you want to make it feel like they're the only one. So that's the biggest responsibility coming in the morning. I would say program planning, you always want to be 3 months ahead. So you don't want to be working on something that's currently happening. So if youth basketball is in 3 months, I'm going to be working on it 3 months before it starts. When I was a rec specialist, my biggest program was summer camp, and I start planning summer camp in November. So you can always find something different. This job is definitely for someone that likes to multitask, because you're not coming in one day working on cheering and just cheering all day. It's cheering, basketball, summer camp, vacation camp. It's all of the above. So you just want to make sure that you're prepared to do anything, any day. So it could be cleaning up from the night before. It could be sitting at your desk all day. It could be answering phone calls from angry parents. It's definitely a multitasking type of day.
It sounds like it. So you mentioned you do, you kind of manage staff. About how many staff do you supervise?
So I supervise directly. We have two senior programmers. We have 3 that work in our PAL center. And then we have 3 programmers that work adult, youth, and then youth sports and our turf facility. So I would say around 6 to 7. Some of them also report to my director. But I always have an open door policy since I was in their position before. I feel like they feel a little bit more comfortable coming to me because I've dealt with the issues that they've dealt with. So it's
Okay, thank
definitely,
you.
it's a team for sure.
Mhm. So it sounds like you're working with both a lot of staff and the public and your participants. And doing some program planning and stuff like that too. So what % of your time would you say you spend like working on the computer versus working directly with people?
I would say, so the entry level recreation specialist, when I was doing that, it was definitely more of a 80-20, 80% with the public, working with coaches. And then 20% was answering emails, using the computer. I would say it's definitely 50-50 in this deputy director position. There's definitely way more paperwork and way more correspondence with the community directly versus individuals like parents, coaches. So I think the 2 positions, if you want to be more active with the public, recreation specialist is way better for you. But if you want to be more in the desk and calm and not being all over the place, getting into a leadership role here is way more comfortable.
Interesting. What is the most challenging part of your job?
I would say trying to make everybody happy. When you work with multiple different, I would say, age groups, so youth, adult, and seniors, you want to make sure they're all getting enough attention. And we're offering enough programs for all levels of participants. And that's challenging, especially when it's definitely easier to come up with a youth program than it is for an adult program, because there's way more to do. So just constantly brainstorming. I don't mind doing that, but it definitely gets hard and overwhelming when everyone has a bunch of ideas and everyone compares you to other communities. And that along with that, it's the financial piece. We like to make sure our programs are low cost. So becoming creative with making things free can be challenging. And making sure that the Auburn residents come first, or that community's residents come first, can also be challenging, especially when you're limited to sponsors and how much people will sponsor. COVID's definitely been the challenge with that, but I would say our biggest challenge is financials and trying to make everyone happy.
Mhm. Thank you. So you mentioned budget and financials. Are you responsible for that part too? The budget?
I work with our director on that. I do help programmers while the program's going on or right before it starts, letting them know what their budget is. So most of our programs we just like to break even. I mean, we always like a little bit in the bank, but we like to break even. We just want to make sure that people are getting what they pay for, because it is pay to play. But it's also, we do want to make sure the city's seeing that we are contributing financially. So I just work with them directly there. As far as the yearly budget or annual budget, I work with my director on any like large projects that are needed. And I'm more of a correspondence for the programmers to the director.
Okay. Donna, what kind of education and training did you need to get your job?
I definitely went the extreme route. I have my bachelor's in sports management, exercise science, and I got my master's in social change in sport. However, the biggest thing I could say for recreation is just to have experience. I was a summer camp counselor for a decade before I got this job. I worked in campus rec when I was in college. And it's just, you have to have the experience and have either participated or worked in the field. So I think those have really been beneficial more than my education, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you have a requirement to do continued or ongoing training?
We just recently are requiring the rec specialists to at least try to find professional development, but there's nothing mandatory. We do participate in the MRPA conferences, which is the main recreation and sports association, or Parks and Recreation Association, sorry. And they just offer webinars, they offer in-person trainings, and it's just more of a way to collaborate with other communities and see what other communities are doing. But we do highly recommend staff to do that. As far as my position as a deputy director, it's just learning more about communicating with the public and aiding programmers in becoming better professionals. So it's a little different for both positions.
Mhm. Okay. So what kind of things were you interested in high school, and what career did you think you would have for the future back then?
When I was in high school, I always knew I wanted to be in education, and I specifically active education. So being a PE teacher was probably my top choice, but I think it's mostly because I didn't realize that recreation was a job. I didn't know that you could get into recreation as a career. And I didn't really learn that officially until I got to college. So I went to school to be a PE teacher. And then when I learned that you could go a different route, I got into the more of the sports management field, and it definitely opened my eyes to the sports world in a different way, and working with municipalities in the community versus just with kids.
I'm just curious, since the entry level for you for this job was one of the programmers, or I forget the official title that you had for that, but what kind of qualifications would someone need to get into that entry level position?
Entry level, I'm just comparing to what we have and in our job description. I would say 4+ years of experience in any recreation, and that could be a summer camp counselor. That could even be just a volunteer for like a program like Babe Ruth baseball. You could be working campus rec, which is like intramurals. Any type of community involvement, because we aren't just sports here, it's also special events. And then you could be participant of adult sports. You could have worked with the senior community. So it's really, it's experience based, but I would say that you should at least have an associate's or a bachelor's degree in some type of sports field.
Okay, thank you. What's the most fun part of your job, or the best part of your job?
The best part of being a rec specialist was definitely seeing a program in the infancy stage and then become successful in the end. I always loved, and I'll still continue doing this, is directly working the program and not just hiring staff to do it, because then you can actually see the people you're impacting. And it really helps you get through the day and avoid burnout when you're seeing what you're doing. And I think as a leader in a leadership role in recreation, it's seeing your employees thrive and almost watching them do what you used to like to do, which is actually experience the program and the success of a program, and just seeing how that makes them want to come to work every day. Because it's definitely a very fun job, but it can burn you out for sure. So making sure that
Okay.
they're avoiding that.
Okay, thank you. The last question I have is, what's the best advice could you give to someone who wants to get into this field?
The best advice I could give would just get involved in your community. If you're interested in outdoor recreation, join some type of hiking group, participate in recreation any way you can. If you can get a part-time job at a rec center, I would highly recommend that. And that could just be being an official for a youth basketball program. It could be running the scoreboard. It could be anything. But I think the best advice would be to just be patient with yourself, because I applied for this job 3 times before I got the entry level. And it's hard to be a young professional at times. So just keep doing things to add to your resume, because in recreation, it's not a 1-page resume. Most places are looking for multiple pages. So becoming a volunteer coach, you can even put that on a recreation resume and it looks good. So just putting yourself out there and trying different things will definitely open the eyes to people when you start applying places.
Okay, great. Is there anything you want to add that I didn't ask?
I would just say that working with the community can be tough, but it gets easier over time. So communicating with angry people can be scary. And I definitely was a very nervous and shy person when I first started. And now I feel like I could talk to anybody and talk them off the ledge and calm them down. So it can be very intimidating to be around people and talk to people all the time. But it does get easier. You just have to put yourself out there. And I would say I was a very shy person. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. But that would be my biggest advice, especially coming from high school. You can be a little shy and timid, but anyone can communicate with the public every day.
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm an introvert. And while you're talking, I was thinking it doesn't sound like a job for an introvert, but I really like the way you frame that.
Yes, I would definitely, I would say I'm an introvert. I've taken plenty of those leadership personality tests. And I would say that most people are surprised I'm in a field where you communicate and talk to the public all the time. But it actually makes me feel so much better at the end of the day when I do something that would put me out of my comfort zone. But yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Charlotte, are we going to start with the next person or?
Yes. Back to Allison.
Yeah. Welcome back, Allison. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks for coming back. Sorry that it was distracting in the first place. And you were describing, I had asked you about your job titles and I can't remember.
So
where
yeah, my job title is Deputy City Clerk, and my education and experiences, I've been in this field for over 15 years. I do have some college, and I continue to receive education, both statutorily required and education of my choice.
That was going to be one of my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for taking the time today too. I don't think I thanked you yet for answering these questions for students who may be interested in pursuing what you do someday. What would you say your essential job functions are? What are the, I know there's varied functions, but if you could kind of just describe a little bit what they are.
So it's administering elections, administering vital records. We issue vital records, and overseeing our business licenses. So those are probably the 3 that I focus on myself.
What would you say the work experience might be to be beneficial to do what you do?
Anybody that's worked in public service, worked in a social service setting, worked in an office setting, worked in a teaching setting, because you ultimately have all of those hats on, at one time or another.
Mm-hmm. Great. What would you say the best part of your job is?
The best and the worst part of my job is the elections.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. It's such a big election right now. It's very exciting, very exhausting. I mean, all of the emotions mixed in one.
Do you, when it comes to election time, do you work over and above your regular day hours? Kind of explain what your schedule is.
So our schedule is, we do. To answer your question, yes, we do. We may have to come in on Saturday. We don't know that yet. We do have volunteers that come in. We have 2 volunteers right now in our office. Our typical hours are an 8-hour day. We've been working mostly 8.5-hour days. We have a great staff right now, so it's really well run.
So you already answered this, but I was going to ask you next, what is the most challenging part of your job? And you said best and the most challenging are kind of the same.
They are, but my other challenge is, we have to, we're ultimately governed by the state, the Office of Vital Records, the CDC. So it's just the change in laws, change in even ordinances that might change. That's what governs how we do what we do. So that can also be a challenge.
What is a typical day like for you?
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are ultimately, even when we're in election mode, we are at the will of the people. So we may have 4 couples come in for a marriage license in a day. Individuals come in for death certificates or any sort of vital record, voter registration. We may have a new business that submits an application. It varies.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting. It's if an individual, it's definitely not boring. You have to multitask very, very well, and you have to have great communication skills.
Mm-hmm. So it might not be good for someone who prefers a more routine type of a schedule like that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Someone who can kind of do a couple of different things even at the same time, multitasking.
Pardon me?
Multitasking, someone who could do, someone would need to be like you, where you have to do so many things all in one day. And
yes. Yes.
Excuse me. You answered whether that you do have to be continually training yourself on the regulations and everything. Do you do any continued training by choice, or are there some things that you like to be learning on, for your own benefit, that above and beyond what you're required to learn?
We do have that option. Yes, if there's a training that might catch our eye, and yeah, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but we do have that opportunity.
What kind of things interested you when you were a high school student?
So when I was in high school, I was very interested in business management, and I was also interested in law. I was in FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America, for 4 years. And that's where I thought I was going to go, was into business management. And a part of my job is that, so I haven't really deviated a whole lot from where I was at way back then.
Mm-hmm. So what other jobs have you had personally along your career path?
So I've worked in a teaching capacity. I worked in a special ed department. I've worked in a social services field, and I've been with local government for the past 15 years now.
So what was some of the biggest challenges that you faced along your career path, along your way to this job?
On my way to this job, well, my biggest challenge is my drive here.
Oh, is it?
My biggest challenges, I really can't think of any.
Mhm. So it kind of smoothly went from what you thought you wanted to do, and as you described, you've kind of come into this position over time, kind of moving forward. You talk about communication. What kind of communication skills are required for your position?
So you have to have excellent verbal and written communication skills. You know, we communicate with the public. We may be communicating with the city council. We communicate with both city officials and state officials. Obviously, our taxpayers.
What would you say your percentage of time is, on a computer versus working with people? And I'm guessing you might say that depends on the time of year as well.
It truly does. If we're not in election mode, I would say 50-50.
What is there anything you wanted to add to, or maybe a question that I haven't thought to ask that you'd just like to say about what you do?
I don't believe so, other than it's a very exciting position in that there is a lot of variety. From elections to vital records to business licensing. And I mean, there's so much more to all of that.
Thank you. So what would be the best advice that you could give to a young person who's interested in pursuing a field similar to what you're doing?
Volunteer. Volunteer. Get to know your community. Yeah, I think volunteer and get to know your community.
And are you part of any committees, or whether required or something you do voluntarily that you continue to participate with, or you're required to participate with?
Currently, I am not.
Not at all. Okay.
Currently, I am not a part of any committees.
Okay.
No.
So, a question that I want to ask is, how does your job align with your strengths and with your interests?
So I feel it aligns very well. I like to multitask. I like to work with people, for people. I just enjoy what I do.
And you obviously have the communication skills. That's a big part of it. And so that's something that aligns with what you're doing. Do you have days where you do feel like you kind of had more of a hard day or a frustrating day? And if you do, how do you kind of maintain resilience in the face of some of your daily challenges?
Of course, I have those days, and I've learned over the years just to kind of take care of myself and focus on what I'm doing. I use my alone time to be able to transition from one role in my life to another without it spilling over. I feel it's a skill that everybody should acquire.
Truly. So I would just want to thank you for your time. I've kind of completed my questions, and I don't know if anybody before we let you go has any other questions that I didn't think to ask.
That is it. No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Switch it up. Thank you.
And I think we're waiting a little bit for Jennifer, not Jennifer Edwards, but Jennifer
Bonig.
Boenig. Boenig.
So I know that Jen Boenig is the next one to come up. She is on her way. She had a meeting right up until 2:30. She promised she would be here at 2:40. So
Yeah, we finished a little bit
here.
early.
Yeah, I will say, with anybody who's interested in the city clerk's office position, one of the things that people could do is pay attention to their local government. Most local government, especially your largest cities, are televised or else have a video of their local meetings. And the clerk is involved in the meetings by taking notes. And also it's important for anybody in that office to be aware of what is going on in local government at that time. So that would be another thing, especially in the high school level, that we tend to not even think about when we're in high school, but you learn so much about local government from looking and watching and attending those meetings. And she's right as far as volunteering goes. I think if you volunteer for your local election, you will have an idea of what the clerk does there, and also the election process, which seems to be in the news a lot these days. So
Cliff, how does someone, apply for positions in Auburn City?
Yeah, so we have, our applications are all online. They can either apply through email, they can drop by our office here and drop off a resume. Some of our bigger departments have online applications that you submit directly to those departments. So yeah, we keep our resumes on file for up to a year. And if a job opens that is their qualifications match, we will submit that resume or application for review at that time.
That's good. I didn't realize that you saved them that long and would go back to them if you had that resource.
Yes, yep, we do. Especially, if we've done interviews and those people haven't necessarily been hired by us, but we may see that, oh yeah, I know that we didn't hire them for that, but they'd be a really great fit for this other department. That's something else that we do. We do a lot of hiring from within too, a lot of movement that way. And one of the things that actually, I don't think anybody has talked about it, with the exception of Brian, maybe, about how he's very integrated in all the departments. Some of them kind of operate in silos. But one of the things is we're very much a team environment here. HR is another one of those departments that works with everybody. But a lot of them, like Allison's, they're working with the public directly and not necessarily working with me or with Jen Edwards as far as that goes. So
what would you say you do look for in someone who's applying? Are there things that really stand out that you really would be more interested if you got a resume in from someone?
Yeah, so experience is huge. It doesn't necessarily have to be education experience. It can be experience in the field. And I think that Donna had alluded to that, possibly, getting involved in your local rec department, maybe as a high school job or a camp counselor at a young age, is probably going to do more benefit for you if you are interested in becoming a rec specialist than actually getting a degree. Although we encourage education, that's going to do more for you than actually getting a degree and then looking for work. And that's just one of the positions. Mark Jolin, he started out as a truck driver for us. And even though his specialty was computers at first, that's how he got the job. And then once we realized that he'd had this other skill set, he moved up quickly into that position. So there's another instance. A job like Bernadette's, where she needs that expertise, is in it as being a crime analyst. she needed that degree. So each job is kind of different, as far as that goes. So I don't know, Jen, if you wanted to talk more on that, or if you want to talk at all while we wait for Jen Bonig.
I don't think I have a lot to add. I would say that, I would emphasize the team bit as well. And I agree with Chris. Some of us do have more interaction with like multiple departments than others, but I do think the city is very much it's a strong team environment here, which is very nice.
Yeah, I think having all the skills is great, but if we don't feel that connection, we are very much, and from the city manager down to the person at the reception desk, I tell this to everybody who applies here in Auburn, that we are expected to serve the public, and the city manager will sit down there and answer the phones just as easily as I will, or anybody else, even though it's not a job requirement. We all help each other out. And if we have outside events, a lot of times you'll see city employees who never leave their office working an event. So there's a lot of volunteers. But it's all part of that team mentality. And I think that's what makes working for the city of Auburn so great.
It sounds like there's a lot of support among all of you, and
For sure.
Healthy teamwork.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. I agree.
Well, while we're still waiting for Jennifer, what about you, Chris? What was your career path into your role now? Is your title director?
Yes, I'm the director of HR. So I went to school actually for theology, believe it or not, something that you wouldn't necessarily need for my job here, although it does help you work with people. And as soon as I got married, I had children. So I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 9 years of my married life. And I picked up a job after both my children were in school as an office manager for a dairy. We lived in Pennsylvania, and I was originally from Maine. And so I decided that we decided that, we would come up to Maine to visit in summertime, and we just hated going back to that very busy life where we lived. And so we decided that we would quit our jobs. My husband would look for a job first, and then we would move back to my home here in Maine, which is what we did. Once we were settled in, I got a part-time job working for a division of Central Maine Power, basically some office work. And an opening came here, believe it or not, for the switchboard downstairs, answering the phones for the city, just part-time. When my kids were going to school full-time by that point, they were working full-time. I realized there was so many departments that if people were on vacation, they didn't have coverage. And I said, I can cover for you. I can do that. And so I ended up working in every single department except the tax clerks, because you have to have special certification from the state for that position. So I got to know everybody. And the HR director at the time said I could use another person in my office. And so I did half-time in the switchboard and the other half as her assistant. I've been here 22 years, and about 7 years ago, she retired and I was appointed as the director. So not necessarily the path that I would have, thought that I would have taken, but I absolutely love my job. If somebody wanted to be in human resources, I would say you should like law. Law is about 60% of our job. The other 40% is paperwork. But I mean, you need human interaction. You need to have compassion. You need to have, at times you need to be not hard, but, be able to deal with, terminating somebody who may not be working up to par and things like that. So it is an emotional kind of swing as well, or it can be, and no 2 days are the same. You never have the same day ever, just because it's a people job and people all have their own stories, whether it's good, whether it's bad, different needs and stuff like that. So it's a great job. But again, if I were pushing somebody to go into human resources, I would suggest that they look into law, or public administration, which, encompasses human resources and Jen is here, thankfully. So,
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Yes, I made it. I zipped back over from a meeting.
Thank you so much for rushing to be here with us. My name is Lori Corbett. I'm a supervisor at the Lewiston Voc Rehab office, and we're putting together some video information for our students and other participants who are interested in finding out more about working in civil service, for one thing. So I just have a few questions to ask you about your job as a recreation specialist and you're a downtown coordinator, events planner. I'm sorry.
Yes, no, that's okay. I know you've talked to quite a few of us today. So yes, I am a downtown coordinator. That is a newer position for the City of Auburn. As part of the strategic planning process, when they did that, revitalizing the downtown area was very important. So as part of the discussion of that came about the idea of having a downtown coordinator, someone who could kind of take the lead on that type of a project. And one of the best ways to get people to come to your downtown area is to have events. So I like to say I get to do the fun stuff. I I get to have fun, I get to do the events, I get to network with business owners, residents, bands, breweries, food trucks. I get to do all the fun stuff.
Cool. What would you say is the main purpose or function of your job?
Right now, it has been events. It's all about building up 3 signature events that the city wants to hold every year. We have, for the last, I think, 5 years, give or take COVID, have done a New Year's Auburn event that has grown to be tremendously successful. It's a free, fun community event in Festival Plaza. We also have the Riverwalk Blues and Brews event, which we held in September. And we are adding a spring event. I say spring, probably May, the first week in May. We're looking at having music at all of those, food trucks, maybe breweries at all of those, and getting people to come out and enjoy a free show, be outside, get together in a more safe manner outdoors.
Okay. Can you just describe what a typical day looks like for you?
Sure. So thinking back to today or even yesterday, we're focusing right now, we're going to be launching a Christmas Village in December. So I was working with the communications director yesterday on all of those applications and making sure vendors were notified of the Christmas Village and whether they were selected or not, finalizing some of the dates, some of the details for that event. I ordered supplies, space heaters, shovels, things like that for the event. So I get to do a little Amazon shopping. I was just at a meeting with the Public Works team. They will help us do all the decorating for the Christmas Village. I'm preparing for a meeting tomorrow. So I also stopped at Hannaford and grabbed some snacks for our meeting tomorrow to make sure we had some snacks for our guests. So meetings, coordinating with other folks, kind of herding the cats, so to speak.
Okay, so what would you guess would be like the percentage of time you spend planning events versus working directly with people versus doing like paperwork and email follow-up and that kind of stuff?
Ooh, it's probably on a typical day, I would say it's probably equally split. A lot of stuff does happen via email. A lot of people communicate that way and or even text message. I will text with some of our food truck vendors to just confirm, hey, you're coming. Hey, when you get here, text me and I'll tell you where to park. So yes, on the computer, but I'm certainly not chained to my desk. But then there's also the not fun stuff of having to do budgets and being mindful of some of those things. So I would say it's probably a pretty even split.
Okay. So speaking of the not so fun stuff, what would you consider the most challenging part of your job?
Math. No, I always go, oh, math. Definitely budgeting for a few different reasons. I think, I don't know, when I always hear the word budget, it always makes me nervous. We've got to be responsible with taxpayer dollars, and the taxpayers want to know what we're spending their money on. So being conscious of having an event, knowing what that's going to cost, what does it take to pull off, and then making sure I fall within that budget. So I always try to stay on top of my spreadsheet when I'm working on an event to make sure we're meeting budget.
Okay. What do you think is the best part of your job?
I get to work with all sorts of cool people. I get to work with all sorts of great people, like I said, between musicians and the food truck owners and the public works team, the police department, the fire department. I don't pull off any of these events alone. So I get to work with a lot of the different departments in the city that most other jobs probably don't. So I have the luxury, and I'm a people person. I like that. I like talking to people. I like being out there. So it's a great job for me.
How long have you been doing this?
Almost a year. I've only
Wow.
been here. I started the week of Christmas.
Wow.
I started the week of Christmas, so almost a year. But I've been doing events for years in other jobs.
So yeah, what was your career path to this job?
So I started off, I was a communications major in college. It's helpful to have a bachelor's degree in this, but it certainly wasn't required for my job, just for folks to know that. I was a communications major. I focused on television, and I actually was working in a newsroom when I graduated from college. Then I transitioned into state government in New Jersey. Then I was fortunate enough, I got married and was blessed to be able to stay home with my kids when they were young. So I actually took probably a good 6 years out of the workforce and decided to come back. And that was hard. That was a difficult transition. And then we had moved back home. Maine is home for me, so moved back here. So I had to kind of reestablish myself in the area and get back into the workforce. So networking, joining some different groups. My husband and I got very active in our local recreation club. So we met various people that way. I started getting involved in some of my town government things. So that helped me find work at the Oxford Hills Chamber of Commerce out in Oxford. I worked there for about 7 years part-time, and then was able to transition full-time. And then I was doing communications work before this at a community action agency called Community Concepts.
So what education and training would typically be required for your position?
I would say for event planning, I think they're marketing, communications, even maybe a business administration background. I think all of those things kind of factor and play into event planning. I think some schools now even have it as a major or a concentration at the very least. You've got to be detail oriented, but know how to work with various people and personalities. And when fires arise, you have to be able to act accordingly and fix the problem, get it solved, get it done, and hopefully no one will know.
You're a fixer.
Yep, I'm a fixer.
Do you have a requirement for ongoing training in your job?
There is no requirement for that, but I mean, you should always be learning new things. So I'm always looking for different trainings or ways to meet with other folks who are in this field, just to learn from them and see what are they doing, what could I do differently, can I work smarter, instead of harder. Am I missing something obvious that I could be doing that would make my life easier?
Okay. So I'm curious what kinds of things you were interested in when you were in high school, and how much of that kind of aligns with what you're doing now?
Well, I've always been interested in current events, and I'm a bookworm. I love to read. So I think that's probably what drew me to journalism. Telling people stories, getting to talk to people and to tell that story. I've always found that fascinating. So I've always liked that. And I knew that I didn't want to do the same thing every day in and day out. I had the opportunity when I was in high school to work at one of the local factories where my dad worked for over 40 years. God love him. And that was not the kind of job that I could do for over 40 years, to work on the same machine and do the same thing for like 8 hours. No, I needed to have a little variety. So being in a newsroom, obviously the news changes every day, but the mechanics of that job are, you're still doing the same thing every day, but it feels different because the subject changes.
Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that I haven't asked?
I don't think so. I mean, we need more people to help plan events. And like I said, being detail oriented, being able to focus on some of those things, that's what really, that's the key part. All those little details, things that you don't think about, like make sure you always have scissors and duct tape, because you never know what you might need those for, or a good extension cord. I have all sorts of random strange things in my car that come in handy for kind of an event go bag. So.
Okay. What's the best advice that you would give to a young person who's considering getting into this field?
Be prepared to deal with different personalities. Be prepared to work odd hours, be willing or have the flexibility to flex your schedule. A lot of times events are nights and weekends. And for me now that my kids are just about grown, it works out well that I can flex my schedule and do things. I know that that's not always easy for folks. But a lot of events are nights and weekends, but you get to work with a great group of people. You get to do fun stuff. I'm going to get to hang out with the bands at New Year's. So, and fireworks. I'm at the fireworks company. So that stuff is fun.
Great. I don't know if anyone else had any questions. Charlotte? Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for your time, Jen. Very helpful. We really appreciate it. Have a nice afternoon.
Thanks, you too.
Notice that Jen has candy in her office behind her too.
I know I've got like all sorts of event stuff behind me. Like that's my wagon to go out and change the storyboards. And I've got mints that I'm going to put out for our meeting tomorrow.
I wondered if it was the shovels you mentioned. You had to buy some shovels, I thought.
No,
that's what that is.
Amazon hasn't brought them yet. They're coming though. I got notification today. They are on the way.
Great.
She really has a fun job. She really does.
Okay, well,